We are at that bewitching hour, and I first welcome all of you to the May 13th CJCC meeting. I also know that we have a number of folks appearing by Zoom, and we welcome them to this alternative. I will, I think, at this time announce that per the county board's directives, this will be the last time that we have the option to meet by Zoom. All meetings going forward will be in person, and so that is again the decision of the county board to go back to at least business as usual, if we can ever have business as usual again. But that will be something that will make sure get noticed, and everyone is aware that that option that we've used for the last year plus will no longer be available. I'm not going to call the roll because my judicial assistant Jody Saxonmeyer as well as Mr. O'Keefe have assured me we have a quorum, and we have a few things we want to get through today, and I know some of you have other commitments, and so we're going to try to make this as efficient as possible. The minutes from the March 18 meeting were included in your materials. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, they stand approved as submitted. Next, we have an opportunity for public comment, and we have a couple of citizens here today, as well as others, I think, by Zoom. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Going once, going twice. Business items, the CJCC and Treatment Alternatives and Diversion Financial Review. Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you, Judge. The CJCC budget is on track. There's no outstanding bills that I'll have to take care of. I did receive an invoice from Justice Point Inc. yesterday for $4,400 that I've already processed. That's to pay for our Day Report Center person that assists with UAs and other things at the Day Report Center. Other than that, everything's 10-4.
Any questions of Mike about the financial status? And just to remind everyone, we have hired a civilian to work in the Day Report Center. They're contracted through Justice Point, and our TAD grant helps fund that position, and at least I have every reason to think the sheriff's going to share with us. But Mike Kaler yesterday shared that this person is really working out well and is experienced in the areas that we wanted some expertise in, and is working out very well. The grant update, Mike, Judge Waterman, or anyone else who's familiar with that process and progress.
Okay, thank you. In your packet, I did put a handout about the Treatment Alternatives and Diversion Program expansion that the state is recommending, the Department of Justice. They had a legislative listening session on this topic a couple of weeks ago, I think. I made this part of your packet. They're asking to take part of the extra money that's coming into the state, into the Department of Justice, to pay for some data analysts, some more support staff at the state level. But I still think the county's funding is going to be increased. And I have Tina, she has the screen up there. As you can see, the state map on the left was the 2007 to 13 TAD grant counties, and if you see on the right, that's current. There's 53 counties, I believe, and a number of tribes also involved in this. So you can see that the state's almost mapped out here with applications for the TAD grant. So I think they're anticipating that probably in the neighborhood of 60 will be applying for TAD funding for 2022 through 2027. So it is going to be very competitive. But I do think there's going to be more money added to the TAD funding this year if the governor's proposal goes through.
And as you recall, we had formed a work group with Judge Waterman and others to kind of spearhead that effort and look at not only what we're currently doing, but maybe ways that we could improve our standing and continue hopefully to be attractive to those who are reviewing the grants. And I think the agenda today might lend itself to some of those ways maybe that we can address our grant for this coming cycle. Any question to Mike or me or Judge Waterman about the grant update and where we're at? I'm going to move number 5 up to the next slot. Our administrator, Mr. Witt, has another commitment, and while I'm relatively confident we'll be done within the time frame before he has to leave to be safe, I'm going to move that up. The Justice Services Task Force, as you know, was something that, as chair, I had proposed. I tasked Judge Nordstrand to head that effort up and identified stakeholders who I believed would be good resources in looking at that particular concept. We've had, I believe, 4 meetings, maybe 5, and at each meeting we made what I would characterize as progress in narrowing the scope, the focus, and coming ultimately to a conclusion that this was a worthy endeavor for the council to take on to identify a justice services department. And once that commitment was made by those in attendance, we then figuratively dumped it in the county administrator's lap to help us identify how it can work and what the structure fiscally as well as personnel-wise will be. Again, just to kind of recap, the whole idea was to bring what I characterize as support services for the justice system under one umbrella, so to speak. The treatment courts, we had hoped for diversion, and that's still, I think, going to be maintained in the DA's office, but with opportunity at least to collaborate and coordinate efforts. The pretrial services work that we're doing in the court system, primarily through Tina and through Mike, as well as the Day Report Center, some of its functionality. And so that was the conclusion we reached. We had input from 2 counties. La Crosse County joined us for one of our meetings, and Monroe County joined us for another meeting. La Crosse being, as I described, I think at our last meeting, kind of the platinum standard with, I can't remember the millions of dollars that they have invested into their justice services program. And while there was much that they're doing that would be worthwhile here, we also knew that realistically, financially, that probably wouldn't work at this time. Monroe County is what I characterize as the silver standard, and I'm not being disrespectful, but they're a more modest program. They're a county of 3 judges. La Crosse is a county of 5 judges, so we're kind of in between. And Monroe County likewise is really doing some incredible things in terms of coordination and services under their Justice Services division. And it was useful to all of us sitting around the table to get that information, to hear that it can work, to hear how it works, but also the challenges that both those programs face and maybe how we could at least head those challenges off up front by developing a new program. I thank Supervisor Fiedler because he was instrumental in really identifying La Crosse, and Travis Sartorius from the PD's office identified Monroe. And so they were extremely helpful to us as a group to try and put structure to this idea. And so once we got things narrowed down, we asked Mr. Witt to come up with a plan, and I'll turn it over to him as to what that plan is and what's happened at the administrative level.
Thank you, Judge Needham. So you can see the chart that's on the screen there. So we took the input from the stakeholders and we looked at what the other models were and what we wanted to accomplish. And we created a new structure for St. Croix County that will move us in the direction that the task force was looking to go. So with the retirement of Mr. O'Keefe, the timing-wise, kind of pushed the task force a little bit to get their work done so we can get to this point. But we're transitioning that position of the CJCC coordinator to a Justice Services Director, which is a department head level position, which has the structure as you see beneath it, utilizing some of our current positions, some of our contracted positions, and some potentially new positions within that department to carry out the mission that the task force has identified. So that recruitment is underway currently. We've actually closed the application period. We're reviewing applications, and we'll be continuing with that hiring process with the hope of having a new person on board in June. That's our status.
Thank you. As Mr. Witt said, we had 10 applicants, and we narrowed that down, and we're interviewing 4 next week with what I would characterize as some pretty exceptional qualifications. So hopefully, certainly by our next meeting and well before that, we'll identify who this new person is, and hopefully have at least some thought as to the direction and vision that he or she may bring to the position. So we'll keep you updated on that. But are there any questions about this whole Justice Services division or the program in and of itself? Thank you. CJCC Behavioral Health Subcommittee, and is Mr. Rhett on, Tina? So we've got Bob Rhett on, who I believe chairs the Mental Health and AODA subcommittees, and there was discussion, I think, at our last meeting about maybe combining those committees because really they intersect in so many ways and have common objectives and I think common goals, so to speak. And so Bob, I don't know if you're going to address this or Mike, but I'll turn the mic over to one of you to kind of lay out what the plan is and what you're requesting.
Thank you, Judge. Mike, I can speak to it if you prefer.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
All right. And Judge, you laid this out very clearly. I think the idea here was to combine 2 subcommittees, the one for substance use disorder and the one for mental health, because of that intersection of commonality between those 2 committees. And Mike and I have gone through the committee membership on both committees to come to some agreement on who would make up the joint behavioral health committee. The other discussion that Mike and I had was around timing of when to hold this first behavioral health subcommittee. And we felt that it would make some sense to wait until his replacement was hired and we had an opportunity to have that person be involved. That's all I have, Mike, unless you have other comments about it.
Yeah, I do, Bob. Yesterday I was approached by Dave Osnes, Supervisor Osnes, and he's also the chair of the HHS board. He thought it would be a good idea if we added at least that position to this subcommittee, and I tend to agree with that. And we would have to change our bylaws so that would stand in perpetuity. It would always be there. So I would recommend adding the HHS board onto our subcommittee, that chairperson. Dave, do you have any comments you'd like to make about that, or? No. Okay. So if we do that, Judge, we probably need a motion to do that.
Thank you. So again, just to kind of recap, we've had 2 separate committees. This would be a combined committee that would look at those 2 very significant issues in the justice system. So that is the proposal. The second proposal, I believe that our coordinator is making is to have the chairman of the DHS committee serve as a standing member of that particular subcommittee as well. And Mike had talked to me briefly before the meeting, and it makes perfect sense to have that representation, but also to have that voice both at the committee level, but at the county board level if there are those types of proposals or initiatives that may require county board involvement or approval. So first, does anyone have any questions about why we're doing this or what this structure is going to look like? I have asked Kate Avalos, who chairs the kind of the bylaws committee, to work with Mike in his waning days here to see if what changes we need to make to our bylaws. Certainly with the change of title for our coordinator, the change now if we approve this new subcommittee, and Kate, I know will work with Mike, or she and I will work to get that finalized and bring it to you in July. So if I don't hear any questions, is there a motion then to approve the formation of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee and to include the chairman of DHS to that particular subcommittee as a standing member?
So moved.
Thank you. And that was Mr. Morissette, I believe, that made the motion. And
Correct.
Mr. Fiedler, you were going to second? Second by Supervisor Fiedler. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Carried unanimously. And thanks to Mr. Rhett and Mike and those who triaged this and brought it to the council. It makes perfect sense on so many levels. The next topic is Sheriff Knutson, and I don't know if Chief Deputy Borgschatz is going to chime in. Will provide us with an update. We met with the sheriff and the chief deputy yesterday, meaning the judges and Mr. Witt and Mr. O'Keefe. So I think we have a preview of what's to come, but we wanted the entire council to have an awareness as to what's happening in the sheriff's department and with his mission. Sheriff.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll actually start with the April statistics from the Day Report Center. We had 899 total test results. 634 of those were negative, 109 were positives. 72 missed tests. A number of reasons for those. And when we have positive test results or missed tests, those are documented. Those aren't always necessarily sent upstairs for bail jumping charges, but they're reviewed on their face of why they missed, and again, sending those up. So one of the things that stuck out to me was the no contact with DRC, and as I look back for at least the 4 months of this year, only one was referred up for a no contact with DRC for a bail jumping charge. And that was one that just kind of went under the radar and we had to go find and bring in. So those that are required by the courts to do testing, by and large, do show up for their tests, which is a positive result. Part of that is their want to comply with the law. Part of that is because of they know there's a substance abuse issue. There is that, as Judge Needham would say, that cry for help. They're showing up to get help. So we sure in all cases try to bridge that gap to get them that. Sometimes, as we found out, that's not always as easy as what it should look like on paper. Of that current supervision level, 319 are on bond, 31 are on Huber, 16 are on treatment court, 43 are on diversion. Number of in-person contacts at the Day Report Center. In April, 973 people walked through the door. 304 phone contact check-ins. So their monthly supervision level is about 399. So they still remain quite active. And of those bail jumping referral charges, 1 was for THC only, 10 were for drugs, 12 were for PBT, the alcohol compliance. And those, again, those are really evened out. GPS location checks. Also, it's monitoring where people are going. You know, some folks are on GPS and they have no contact areas. They have no contacts with victims. They have no contacts with bars. Maybe they're a high risk for safety, and they're monitored more vigilantly. In April, we had 612 location checks. March was 659, February 558, January 527. So not only is it folks coming in the door and testing, it's also making sure that they're where they're supposed to be, or they're not going where they shouldn't. And the compliance rate, as we look at all that, was 88%, 88.76, almost 89%. Right in there in that wheelhouse that we talk about every month, about 90%. March was 90%. February was 89%. January was also 89%. So there is a consistent compliance rate for those folks, which is good news. And now the bad news. 2015, the Day Report Center was opened, and the thought and the mission really was we had found that over the years, when people were on bond, there was really no, I don't want to say accountability. There was no checkups. They came to court, and if law enforcement had contact with them on the street, whether it was a traffic stop or domestic or a new investigation, that was really their bail bond check-in. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of monitoring. So the Day Report Center was really a public safety driven mission building, and it still is. As I said yesterday, you know, we kind of had a feather in the cap of we are the only law enforcement run Day Report Center in the state of Wisconsin. And that comes with some challenges, and those challenges we are really facing now. It takes, because of Monday through Saturday, doors open at 8, doesn't mean they're in at 8. And a little earlier, doors close at 6, doesn't mean they walk out the door at 6. A lot of times people test at 5:30. If they violate, paperwork needs to be done. And there's a lot of times those folks don't get out the door until 7, 8, 9 at night. So those are long days, so it takes staff to do that. We have 5 people right now that are assigned to that as well. In those 5 included is Huber. So part of my statutory duties for Huber. Well, one of our key people, Mike Kaler, tendered his resignation this last week. And he was really the inception. He really worked on the building of that center. Not necessarily structurally, but procedurally. And he came to us with some knowledge and history and experience of working in a day report type center. So he had that knowledge, and we really relied on that. One of our other folks that was in there was Andrew Rhett. And Andrew was our Huber officer and has been for a year or 2 years. He also resigned. So law enforcement is going into the private sector. And as you know, our social climate right now is not conducive to longevity for those in our profession. We also lost 2 more. One was a 21-year employee, another was a 10-year employee. So down 4, I'm told more to come. So that has put us in a bind. And specifically because of that knowledge, that bind starts at the day report center. So we need to rethink that model. Not the mission of the model, but the staffing of the model. And we are starting to look, obviously, with Administrator Rhett, with the judges that we met with yesterday, obviously keeping public safety as our number 1 priority. How do we continue to do this? As it is right now, it's not sustainable to keep it as the model as it was yesterday. Next week will change. How those changes are, I don't know if any of us really know for sure. I think we have some ideas. Administrator Witt brought up, kind of the new flow chart, and part of that is maybe civilians. We do have 1 employee that is civilian right now in the day report center. Marisa is her name. Justice Point. And she does a fabulous job. She's caught on quite quickly, and I'm told that Milwaukee County is all civilian for their day report center. And so that's a model that we will look at, and we will see if it can work here. I have no reason to believe if it doesn't work somewhere else that we can't take some of the good of that and try to implement that here. But for now, the face of that day report center has changed. We're still going to monitor those high-risk offenders, those public safety. We will still continue to GPS those check-ins. I don't think there's any way that any one of us feel comfortable turning our backs on continued monitoring of some individuals, and we'll continue to do that. But again, it's going to change. Your Honor, am I missing anything?
Yeah,
on
I
that?
think, Sheriff, you covered certainly what we talked about yesterday, but you might also want to share just department-wide, how many openings do you have?
I have 13. And Chief Deputy was told more to come. So Mark knows the challenges right now of law enforcement. We had, for patrol, I have 3 open spots. 27 applied, 20 showed up for the test, 15 showed up for the interview, and we will begin to weed through from there. So, Mark, would you like to add anything about our challenges in law enforcement right now? Because I have to keep it political, and I don't know if I can, so you go ahead.
I don't know that I can do much better, but thank you, Sheriff. I know that I've been very lucky in the last year and about 2 months to have been full staff, but for the 3 years prior to that, we would hire people, bring them on. They would go through the FTO process and at some point say, law enforcement isn't what I thought it was going to be, and then quit and go back into the private sector. I had an employee that worked for us for 2 years left to go into the private sector, and a lot of it is the political and social pressures. Pressures from family because they don't necessarily understand the role of law enforcement in society. But I think probably the last 4 years have been very difficult in trying to not only keep but recruit new people into a career that right now is one that doesn't have a shining light on it from a lot of perspectives. We do know that we have a lot of silent support or maybe quieter support than what some people are seeing, but I do agree with the sheriff that it's a very difficult position to be in as a supervisor, as someone trying to recruit good people to bring those good people in. And they're out there. It's just a matter of trying to get them into this profession.
We always talk about the pendulum swinging, and we sure hope it swings at least back to center, because right now it is not. Mark, and I'll echo what Mark said about local support. We have very good local support. We have very good community support, very good regional support. But these officers see, every time they turn a TV on, nothing good. From politicians, certain politicians, to certain political groups, to certain media outlets, to certain false narratives. And we are, whether right or wrong, it's reported that it's wrong, and that we are all of a evil group, which is not true. We all know that. But that's the narrative out there. And we really support our local support groups. But it's not keeping the people around. They don't need it. They said as they said, the good cops will be good somewhere else in another job. They don't need this. So,
As the sheriff said, we met yesterday because certainly we have immediate steps that we, meaning the judges, need to take regarding the, I can't remember what the number was, but 150 plus, maybe closer to 200 folks who are on current bonds who are being monitored by the Day Report Center. So we have at least a plan in place to triage that, hopefully not sacrificing public safety, but knowing that what impacts the Day Report Center is going to impact the courts. We're also hopefully reasonably confident that in discussions with county administrator, county board, public protection, whoever else, that maybe we can come up with a plan to maintain the Day Report Center. We take great pride in it. It was the only law enforcement run program in the state, and we still want a law enforcement presence because it makes good sense to us to have a law enforcement presence with that program. But how it's going to look, we really don't know. These are uncharted waters for all of us in uncertain times. And I was sharing with someone the other day that the era of people going into certain professions for a career, I'm not sure where we're at. When I came here as a judge, our public defenders were all career public defenders. They all had 20 plus years of experience and aged out. They retired from that agency. District Attorney's Office were career DAs and ADAs who were ADAs for their careers and retired out. I think in our DA's office right now, the most experienced ADA, save Mr. Collins, who just came back as a contract, I think is 6 years of experience. In the public defender's office, for those that serve St. Croix County, it's about that same threshold of 5 to 6 years. So it is a struggle, and I think I can say that on behalf of the sheriff as well. They're aging. They're making a career out of law enforcement may be a bygone conclusion because those who were in that program when I started have either retired out or are in the process of retiring out now, and we have this constant turnover. And his officers, our agency officers, are all excellent, but they're young. I mean, part of it is I'm getting very old, and so everyone looks young. But we have a young law enforcement staff right now. So we'll continue to work with the sheriff, with Mr. Witt, others, to keep the program afloat as best we can, and then hopefully by July have some news about what the structure will look like going forward. So I think
Judge Needham,
Yes.
if I may, I don't know if it's the right time to do it, but on behalf of the city of Hudson, I certainly want to thank the Sheriff's Department and all the surrounding police departments for all the mutual aid. It does not go unnoticed what you guys have done for the citizens of Hudson and the surrounding community. So we appreciate your hard work and your dedication to your jobs. And being one who's grown up in law enforcement, I understand how hard it is, and we'll back you 110% all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Morissette, and I'm not speaking as a judge, I'm speaking as a citizen right now. I grew up as a PK, not as a preacher's kid, but as a policeman's kid. And so I have that affinity as well for the profession. I can remember every time my dad got called out to a domestic, my mom literally would shake. because she wasn't sure what that would ultimately lead to. So, again, as a citizen, I too commend those who have chosen that profession, noble profession, as I described it yesterday. So with that said, anything else about where we're at with our law enforcement situation in the county, and I think I can say statewide, nationwide?
Judge, this is Bob with HHS.
Yes,
Could I make a comment about that?
absolutely.
No, I've not had these conversations internally, but I think HHS would be interested in finding ways to partner with you, Sheriff, on the Day Report Center at least, and maybe finding some solutions that could assist you in staffing. Maybe we could talk more about that offline.
Thank you, Mr. Rhett, and again, I would not be truthful if I didn't say there was at least some discussions yesterday about trying to triage more with your department for those high-risk individuals, those who we've identified as addicts or alcoholics, who we said show up for testing knowing that they're going to test positive. And I'm, again, never sure as to what that should tell us. But we welcome, Mr. Rhett, your department's engagement. And as I said, once we schedule that meeting and have done some initial exploration, we, meeting as a system, welcome that input, but maybe those discussions with the sheriff and Mr. Witt are better had at that level in terms of an ultimate proposal, but thank you for offering that. Anything else?
Huh?
Yes.
Well, this is Allison. I was just wondering, the update is excellent, and it's good to know this information. And maybe it's not relevant to this group, but are there strategies and plans to kind of build the future of policing in our area and what it can look like? And things like we're just brought up of kind of integrated programs with mental health and policing. I'm not aware that we have a huge problem in the area. I live in River Falls, but and maybe it's not a topic for this meeting. I don't know. Was this just intended to be an update on the state of policing?
Yeah, I think it was more of an update, Ms. Page. I did ask yesterday about, those that are going into the profession either through CVCT or one of our other technical programs, and at least anecdotally it was shared that the Satellite Technical School in River Falls generally will offer a program designed to lead to a law enforcement degree, and apparently there was not sufficient interest this last semester to support the program, at least through River Falls. I don't know if Chippewa Valley, if they have, I hope their program is up and running, but I think, as you said, this maybe is a bigger discussion in terms of support, in terms of trying to encourage at the high school level, those who are looking for careers, et cetera. But Sheriff.
And Allison, I think one of the things, I think maybe, hopefully on that same path of what we see policing and maybe social services combining with in the future. Was that kind of a thought process as well that you were inquiring of?
Yeah, absolutely. That how do you, because we could talk all day about the situation nationwide with policing and what's going on in the divides and then how politicized it's become. And we could talk all day, but that doesn't really get us to a better tomorrow. And so I'm just wondering, what are we thinking? If we could just, around here I say a lot, if we could just have a blank chalkboard and we designed a system and a process, what would it look like? What would it look like when someone's having a mental breakdown? Would the policeman be the person who shows up with no psychiatric assistant? Things like that. And what are the thoughts on that? And again, it might not be a topic for this organization or for this committee. I'm just curious if it's even being explored in our region, those kinds of ideas.
Well, I will say that on our last meeting, Mr. Rhett, him and I I can't remember which meeting that was. It was a Zoom meeting. That narrows it down. I had brought up that, yes, we have to look at that model of, it's working somewhere else in the country. There's got to be another way for us to respond to mental health crisis. It's got to be if they are a danger to others or themselves, immediate, there should be a component of law enforcement to at least make things safe. But then there also, I believe, has to be a component of a mental health or social services or something there when we're not needed, or instead of us. And much of that comes with purse strings and personnel. In a perfect world, if somebody called in and says, I'm in crisis, I'd like somebody to talk to, yes, that is the job of the trained professionals for mental health, those in crisis.
Yeah.
We have very limited training in that. We're there to stop a threat, make things safe, and then we end up putting someone in cuffs, taking them to a hospital, and sitting with them for 8 hours like we did yesterday, and then go to Winnebago, another 10 hours. That was yesterday. So, yes, and I don't think there's a cop out there that would say, no, please don't take that job away from us.
Right.
Because that is just an area that we are not trained in. Can we envision something like that in the future? I'd love to be on that panel to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, the model as it exists just puts policemen in ridiculously challenging positions. And anyway, it's a bigger thought than for today, I'm sure, but just curious.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Moving on to the Casa update. Judge Waterman.
Thank you. We assembled a committee yesterday to meet to discuss the next steps in the Casa program. We probably had about 15 or 16 people, some in government, some outside of government. All had an interest in the Casa program and in better serving children. Out of that meeting, we have assembled a steering committee, which is going to do the legwork to actually get a Casa program up and running in St. Croix County. There are a number of immediate tasks. One will be having a 501c3 formed. One has already been created for another Casa program elsewhere in the state who is not up and running yet. So that 501c3 status will be transferred to St. Croix County for our use, but that will take about a month or so to do. We'll also be drafting or redrafting some bylaws and organizational documents. We'll need to hire an executive director to oversee the project, recruit volunteers, and then train volunteers. So those are the immediate steps that will be taken. This is going to be a program that will exclusively serve St. Croix County. You may have participated in meetings before where a CASA program was going to be housed out of Barron County, kind of operating as the hub, and St. Croix County serving as a spoke. Well, that model is not going to be pursued any longer, and we're just looking strictly at a program for St. Croix County. We anticipate that if all things go according to plan, we'll hire an executive director by September 1 and start serving children by October 1. So that's our preliminary estimate at this moment. I'm happy to answer any questions. All right.
I think Mr. O'Keefe included some materials that had been shared with DHS, Mike?
It was HHS.
With HHS about the numbers of kids that we have in out-of-home placement. I don't remember, was it 80?
Well, we're running about a 3-year average of 80 new child protection cases each year. And that may not sound a lot, but these cases oftentimes involve families. So you're dealing with sibling units, so there's multiple children. And a child protection case can last 2 years, sometimes even longer. So they're not cases that just come in and out the door very quickly.
And I think out of those 80 cases, I believe it was mentioned yesterday, 140 kids who are placed out of home currently, who we're trying to, again, identify that one caring adult who in all likelihood is going to make the difference. So it was a good meeting yesterday. Sue Schwartz, who is the state director, was in Barron trying to, I want to be kind, resuscitate their program, and came down and met with us yesterday. And we're very positive again about that, and I know we have significant interest from the county board about that particular program. Any question about Casa? The folks who volunteered, or at least were encouraged to volunteer for the steering committee, are outstanding, and I really think are going to provide that leadership to move the program forward. The judges will certainly be involved, but we have to step back from some parts of it given our ethics and fundraising and some of those other things. So we're trying to step away in part from heading up the effort and trying to dedicate it more to citizens in the county to spearhead that effort. Anything else on Casa? Well, the last part of the meeting is really to recognize two people. It says Ben Wopat, but I don't think it comes as a surprise that I also plan to recognize Mike O'Keefe. And before I forget, if you haven't, there are bagels and donuts and some other things that we are hosting to recognize both these. And I've prepared some comments because if I don't, I become spontaneous, and sometimes that's not a good way to address something this important. As I was thinking about this last night, I thought, well, okay, if I were to look up the phrase public servant in the dictionary, and then I realized I'd be dating myself to refer to a dictionary, so if I were to Google public servant, I would probably see two pictures. And those two pictures would be Ben Wopat and Mike O'Keefe, because they epitomize, in my opinion, what it means to be a public servant and to dedicate one's life, either avocationally or vocationally, to the greater good, which I think has been the theme so much of our meeting today. Both of these gentlemen are leaving public service for that alternative that's looking better and better to me all the time, called retirement. And so we wish them well in their retirement. But as I said, I thought it was only appropriate that this body recognize both of them because we're an organization that promotes the justice system and collaboratively seeks to improve that system. And both of these gentlemen have had a significant role in the improvement of the justice system in our area. First, I'll recognize Judge Ben Wopat. Ben has served as municipal judge in the village of North Hudson for 36 years. And yes, you heard me correctly, 36 years. That's before at least some of the people in this room were born. And Ben has served with yeoman service for not only the village, but the 10th Judicial District. I served as deputy chief and chief judge for 13 of those 36 years and was tasked by the chief judge at that time, Ben Proctor, and then ultimately I took over myself and really being the administrative supervisor of the 20-plus municipal courts that are in the 10th District. And during that tenure, I generally came to categorize the judges who I worked with in either high maintenance, low maintenance, or no maintenance. And Ben Wopat was a no maintenance judge. I can't remember one occasion when he, his clerk, village president, or anyone would call me to ask for help, to complain, or ask me to intervene in some internal matter, which has been the situation in some of our other courts in the district. Rather, Judge Wopat was a judge I knew I could go to mentor other judges, to take a calendar for a colleague in another community on very minimal notice, or just to give me insight into the workings of the municipal court system, which is in many ways unique to the justice system, and certainly something that circuit court judges aren't always familiar with. And so Ben was one of those folks who mentored me in terms of how those courts work. I can say that he certainly is a recognized leader among his peers and known not only for his judicial demeanor, his knowledge of the laws. He is one of those judges who is a licensed attorney, but also for that quality that I have shared is about 90% of judging, and that's called common sense. It's not knowledge of the law. It's not some magical quality that judges have. It's common sense, and that's what judging is really all about. And again, Ben epitomizes that in terms of his work on the court and his work for the courts. And I know I can speak on behalf of the village, on behalf of the county, on behalf of the 10th District, in saying that he will be missed in terms of his leadership, in terms of his service to the justice system. So I want to recognize him publicly. I have a certificate as well as a little token of our appreciation, but before I did that, I know Judge Garrity, who is the liaison judge. I named her to that capacity for the 10th District. She serves as municipal judge here in Hudson, but Judge Garrity.
Thank you, Judge. The village of North Hudson has lost a giant. I say that not just because Ben Wopat is one of the tallest people that I know, but because he's also been a pillar of the community as municipal judge for 36 years. I've had the privilege of working with Ben for 25 of those years, and when I say privilege, I mean privilege. Ben has also been focused on his pursuit of justice, articulate in his dialogue about the law, and loyal to his oath and his community. Ben and I have substituted for each other over the years, and I always felt like I got the better end of the deal because it was rare I had to fill in for Ben, but my brother-in-law ensured that Ben had to fill in for me quite regularly. In recent years, as Judge Needham indicated, Ben has been a frequent mentor of new judges in the 10th Judicial District, and I was always confident that with Ben behind them, our new judges would be equipped for the municipal bench. Ben has maintained the integrity and professionalism that the third branch of government strives for. So on behalf of the 10th Judicial District and the other 230 municipal judges in the state, Judge Wopat, I am honored to present to you this plaque in gratitude for your 36 years of service to the village of Hudson and the state of Wisconsin.
Then, Judge Wopat, come on up here, front and center. His clerk, Becky O'Keefe, who happens to be the better half of Mike O'Keefe, is also here. She's retiring, as I understand. And then for Denise, how long have you been treasurer of the county?
4 years.
For the last 4 years, every time I've seen Denise Anderson, I've said to myself, why do I know her? Why do I have this connection? And then I realized she was the clerk for Judge Wopat I believe before Becky took over, and so Denise would come to all of our district meetings, and so I made that connection late last week, Denise, so it takes me a little while, but after 4 years, I made the connection. So Ben, this is just, again, a certificate that we had prepared to the Honorable Ben Wopat, Village of North Hudson Municipal Judge, 1985 through 2021, in recognition and appreciation of valued and exceptional services rendered to the citizens of the Village of North Hudson, the 10th Judicial District, in the state of Wisconsin, dated at Hudson, Wisconsin, the 13th day of May, signed by myself and Mike O'Keefe as coordinator. And we did get you a water bottle. I understand that you are an avid outdoorsman to use, and so we really thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
And I think you should say something. Have a...
Well, I'm very happy to have received this honor and also to have my last two clerks of court here with me. Denise, of course, is just down the hall, is now as the treasurer of the County of St. Croix, so you can see that she certainly had great capabilities, which she exercised in my behalf for many years. And she did a wonderful job of training Becky also, and Becky has been my strong right hand. And the law is relatively simple. As Judge Needham pointed out, common sense is the most important factor in being a successful judge. But the administrative side is important too, and I was able to totally ignore that with Denise and Becky at my side. They took care of every administrative detail. I never had to worry about any of that. And the few occasions when we had some potential disruption, Chief Richard stepped in, and we never had anybody that we found in contempt of court, because we frankly, if we treated people with respect, they tended to respect the court also. So that's a very important thing, I think, and hopefully everyone here feels that same way. I sympathize with the officers who serve as police. These are tough times, and I've talked to some of the officers, and I understand the social and family pressures that cause them to drift away from the profession. So I thank you all for the honor. Appreciate it much.
Thank you.
And carry on.
Thank you, Judge. The other public servant, as I said, that we want to recognize, and this is certainly a more direct connection for this body, is Mike O'Keefe. On March 8th, I received this letter, which, again, I knew was coming, but hoped Mike would come to his senses and reconsider. But it says, "This is to inform you that I'll be resigning my position as a CJCC coordinator, and my last day of work will be June 1 of 2021. This was not an easy decision for me because I consider being the CJCC coordinator my dream job. I appreciate the support I've received from my supervisors, the other judges, administration, CJCC, council members, and county board supervisors. Having worked at the state and county levels of government, I find there's no comparison in the way I was treated as an employee of the county. I always felt I was treated with respect and as a valued member of the team. I wish you success with the CJC Council and consider it the foundation of community justice in this county." My first thought when I got that letter was simply to issue an order and prohibit Mike from retiring and to threaten contempt if he proceeded on this rather reckless course. But then I reconsidered and humbly accepted Mike's resignation. 7 years ago, our CJCC was in its infancy, so to speak. We were really struggling to find our identity. We had hired a coordinator whose tenure, I believe, was no more than 6 months. And so we're really trying to ask ourselves, was this a good idea? Is this something we should pursue? Judge Lindell, who was chair at the time and presiding at the time, came to Judge Vlack and to Judge Cameron and to myself. Or were you here? Yeah, Judge Cameron, and said, there's this guy, Mike O'Keefe, who's just retired from being a probation supervisor and has had a long and successful career with the Department of Corrections. Maybe he would be interested. And so we encouraged Judge Lindell to reach out to Mike, and he turned out, as I said, to be the perfect choice. He not only brought with him decades of experience in the criminal justice system, but had supervisory experience. He's so well organized, he makes my messy office look clean. Well respected, and we hoped was looking for that purpose in life after retirement. So my understanding is Judge Lindell went to Mike and said, "Mike, get us through the next 6 months. That's all we really need, is somebody to help us bridge that gap and get us to that point where we can find a permanent replacement and hire a new coordinator." And 7 years later, we're here to again thank Mike for not only bridging the gap but taking us, as I shared at the county board, from infancy through those terrible twos, through adolescence, through puberty, and now into adulthood as an organization. When I took over as presiding 2.5 years ago, I went to Mike and said, I'm not a micromanager. My full-time job is to be a judge. And so I will delegate to you, commit to you the responsibilities for doing this work. And if you need my help, you come to me, but I am going to expect you to lead the work of the CJCC. And not only did he accept that challenge and lead this organization during my tenure, but we are really the better for it. Mike, as I said, was recognized at the county board meeting on May 4 with a standing ovation, which really, in my mind, was a testament to the respect he's not only earned by this group, but by the county in general and by the supervisors who respect his work. And as I said, his knowledge of this system is unmatched. There's no one he doesn't know. When I say, Mike, you know anybody that maybe could help us with this? He says, yeah, I've got somebody in mind. And next thing I know, we have a meeting scheduled with another stakeholder, and Mike has coordinated all that. He has done what I characterize as yeoman service to the county. And in addition to being his supervisor, although he did more supervision of me, I think, in terms of my role as chair, I'm really privileged to call him a friend. And now a retired colleague. He, like Judge Wopat, will be sorely missed. And before I present Mike with his certificate and a gift from the judges, I know Judge Waterman wanted to speak as well, and maybe Judge Black.
I just wanted to say a few comments in recognition of Mike's retirement and his departure from St. Croix County. It was just the other day that I went down to Mike's office to visit him about a topic. The topic is unimportant, but I went down to seek Mike's advice and guidance about something. And as conversations around this building usually go, we bounce from topic to topic. And one of those topics was about mentorship and how important it is to have good mentors. And we recognized how there's a lot of new young talent coming up in various disciplines and various professions. And while the new and the young talent is frequently well educated and very qualified and ready to go out there and get the job done, sometimes it takes the guidance of a mentor to share some wisdom and some experience to make sure that that job gets done right. And as I look around this room and I see the names up on Zoom, I know that there are a lot of people here who have gone to Mike O'Keefe looking for his guidance, for his wisdom, for his experience, and who Mike has been a mentor to. And I think I speak for all of us when I say, as someone who I felt has been mentored by Mike O'Keefe when I came to this job, we're definitely going to miss you. We're going to miss having that experience and that guidance. But I'm also reassured knowing that the guidance and the wisdom that you left is still with us. It's ours to keep. And with that, we will continue to serve the public. So I really appreciate your service, Mike, and we're definitely going to miss you.
Judge Black, do you have?
Just quickly, I can't adequately express in words what you've accomplished for us and how much we appreciate what you've done. One anecdotal comment I want to make is that years ago, Mike came to me and said, you know, Judge, what do you think about a domestic violence court? Well, I've been thinking about that for about 30 years. And I went to a couple national conferences, and when it really got to setting this up, as Judge Enum said, talk about somebody who's organized. I got to oversee the court. Almost everything we did to get this going, I have to recognize Michael Keefe's participation and your leadership. And again, I cannot adequately express in words what you've done, and I thank you.
So on behalf of the council, Mike, you got a certificate at the county board meeting. Here's another one to frame, or it's already framed. You can hang it on your wall, and a gift from the judges. Thank you so much. Thank you. Mike.
Thanks, Judge. I just want to say thank you. This was my dream job, and I will miss it, but more importantly, I'll miss the people I think we built a good foundation for our justice system. I do hope we continue to get more input from our community members. I think that's extremely important. A lot of people really don't know what goes on inside of the system, and they should. Because, one mistake and you're in front of a judge, you need to know exactly how things operate and that the process is going to be fair. I think St. Croix County is one of the fairest systems I've ever witnessed, and I've worked in several counties throughout my career, so I can attest to that. And again, I just want to say thanks, and I'll miss all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Request for future agenda items, again, if there's anything anyone would want, and as Mike said, we encourage our citizen members, there may be things that you would like us to consider or take up or at least bounce around the room, so never hesitate to contact me, I guess, at this point until we can hire Mike's replacement. But we welcome anyone's thoughts and ideas. I think, as I shared at the last meeting, we've been at that 30,000-foot position, I think, for now 7 or 8 years, and I think we're at that point in our identity, so to speak, to now start looking at ways to develop programs, ways to put into place what we've talked about kind of at that high level and maybe get more grounded in terms of actual programs and things that people can say, this is what we accomplished. So I'm not minimizing what we've done to this point, but I really am of the opinion that we now need to step into that next phase of our existence relative to our work as a CJCC. And part of that is what we heard from La Crosse and Monroe and some of these other counties. So with that said, I have no other announcements or correspondence, and unless there's anything else to come before the body, Mr. or Judge Waterman.
Treatment Court Subcommittee will be meeting in this room and on Zoom immediately after CJCC concludes.
And again, if you haven't, stop over and get something to eat. Thank you for your time today. Great meeting. We'll see everyone at our next meeting of the body on July 8th. We're adjourned.